Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff Mosher. It's Adam Caplan doing what we do here on Inside the Birds. This is going to be a pretty cool Inside the Birds, Adam, because we're just going to go through just a couple of the new announcements from the Eagles since we did our last pod, because then they came out with a few more staff announcements and some people had some questions about some things. So we'll go through that. And then we're just going to answer a bunch of the Ask ITB questions that we haven't been able to get through. So it'll be a fun Inside the Birds, I think, because we're going to touch on a number of different topics and kind of wrap up some of the things that have happened in the past week or two. So before we even get into that, we want to personally thank everybody who has interacted with us on Twitter. Just especially lately, we're getting a lot of really positive feedback and people are loving what we're saying and the information they're getting. So thank you for all of those who have reached out to us on the Twitter account at Inside Birds. Please keep following. And for those who haven't, please follow. And also, we've gotten a ton, Adam, of 5-star ratings and reviews from Apple Podcasts. So we really appreciate those. And we ask that people continue to do so. And if they haven't yet, please do that. It really, really helps to give us a 5-star rating and then leaving a positive review. And last thing.
Appreciate it. Yep.
Yeah, last thing. We're getting closer to the date. So for everybody to know, big announcement from me and Adam is that there will be a website coming that is going to be launched by us basically soon, right before the Combine is our expected launch date. Can't give out all the details just yet, but I just want everybody to know that the website will have a lot of, it'll have some of our podcast content, video content, but also written content. Adam and I and perhaps a few other people will be writing for the website. We'll be covering not just the Eagles, but giving you a lot of NFL level stuff too. You know, we got the draft coming up. We got free agency coming up, the Combine, owners meetings. There's going to be a lot of Eagles content, but there's also going to be a lot of NFL content. Adam is, even way more well-sourced than me on the NFL, so he's going to have a lot of stuff he'll be able to put out. So we'll keep everybody posted as far as a URL and where to go and a newsletter that'll be involved. But we just want the people to get excited because we're excited about launching this, and I know Adam and I are excited about writing for it. So good news on that end, and we'll give everybody more information as the podcasts come out as we get closer to the start of the Combine. I know you're fired up about it, Adam.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, all my work, even when I was at ESPN, we didn't have a blog. So, yeah, I would have to send my scoops to the news desk. But, if I wanted to do, stuff that wasn't breaking, there was nowhere for me to put it other than on Twitter. Mm-hmm. So now I don't have to. I don't have to give away all my news on Twitter anymore, which is, with Eagle stuff, I've done my best to save all of it. Unless it's breaking, I have to put it on Twitter.
Right.
But no, we actually were the first ones to put the who did we put out today? I can't remember now. I put it the Aaron Moorhead. We gave it to our subscribers exclusively. We got it out first, 6 a.m. on whatever that was, Thursday morning.
Yeah, that he was going to be the guy.
Yeah. So this is, we're trying to do our best to save stuff for you guys. And Jeff's right. We really appreciate the comments and the feedback, because our growth, I'm going to say, Jeff, the last 3 months has been incredible. We've got a number so far. We didn't think we could get this quickly.
Yes.
And it's a tribute to our listeners, because they're kind of telling us by their questions what they want. And so we go get the information for you, because we want to know as well.
That's right.
And that really helps. So
I always say we get great questions from our listeners.
They're really good.
We're really impressed by the level of questions we got. All right, let's dive into some of the announced changes that happened, I believe, within the last 24 to 36 hours. The big one that stood out, Adam, Jeremiah Washburn, who is wearing kind of two hats here, which are really interesting because you don't see this a whole lot. Yeah, he's going to be the senior defensive assistant, and he's also going to be the director of player personnel, which is a scouting role. It's usually the number 2 guy to your director of player personnel, or your vice president, in this case. Correct. Andy Weidel. So he's got a pretty high spot there in the scouting department, as well as being a valued defensive coach.
All right, so I do know a couple things here. When he is handling his role in defense, he'll be in the defensive line room. Mm-hmm. I reported a month ago that he could have been the assistant defensive line coach. But that is, by the way, Nate Ollie I'm told he's still there. He's still the assistant D-line coach, so he's still there. Mm-hmm. We know that Philip Daniels is not. Now, the director of player personnel By title, Jeremiah Washburn would be the second highest ranked personnel man in scouting. Waddle's number one, and Ian Cunningham, who's their assistant director of player personnel, was the number two guy. I don't have enough information yet, so I can't come out and say exactly what's happened here.
Right.
But Geoff, for this to happen right now before the draft, these typically happen after the draft, the promotions.
Right.
In terms of the personnel department, I don't get it. I mean, I've heard Washburn. I'll say this about Washburn, talking to multiple people. He did a brilliant job in his advance work for the coaches, particularly on defense. But man, to make him a director when he had not even been part of the personnel department before.
Yeah.
Really?
That's the first thing that jumped out at me.
How about that, huh?
I have no issue with someone who wants to cut their teeth in scouting, but for him to have gone from basically being assigned to special projects, right, last year.
Yeah.
And then, as you're mentioning, kind of leapfrogging over guys like Ian Cunningham, who are already kind of considered maybe the successor or the number 2 or 3. It just raises eyebrows. Now, you and I don't know what kind of conversations were had back behind scenes, right? Well, you might, but I mean,
not yet. I don't.
Yeah,
no,
you don't.
This
you
just
said
stunned
you don't.
me.
Right.
I was like, all right. So I got to tell you something very quickly. Speaking of that, I didn't know about this. I was I was busy Friday on some personal business. So I see the Eagles email come in, and I didn't have time to look at it. I saw Washburn's name on it, so I knew that he was going to be involved in the defense.
Right.
So how do you think I hear about what he's doing? I had a player personnel director from another team tell me, "Did you know?" He said, "Do you know what Washburn's role is?" I'm like, "I don't know. What do you mean?" I said, "He's just working on defense." He goes, "No, don't you know he's named director?" I'm like, "Director of what?"
Right.
So I stopped what I was doing. I was in a meeting. I stopped what I was doing, and I read it, and I put my hand over my mouth, and I'm like, I was in shock. I was like, I know people like Jeremiah Washburn, but like, you just said it. How do you go from not being involved in player personnel, other than doing some advanced work for coaches and projects, to the number? I don't get it.
Yeah, you told a great story, because I don't think a lot of people. I think we can kind of enlighten our listeners on what it's like to be a reporter sometimes, and when certain things are kind of up. That's a great example, and I know that there have been times in my career where the information has come to me before I went looking for it. And usually when that happens, people around the league sources, they see something and they're like, "Hey, did you notice that?" And you're like, "Yeah, but I don't know what to make of that." And they think they'll usually tell you what to make of it. It's a lot of times it's not positive. I remember when people were starting to text me about Chip and Howie way before it came to the surface, that there were some issues there. So look, you and I shouldn't sound any alarms other than to put out the fact that this is not typical, and that other people around the league are observing this. And so if something were to happen where down the road we realize that there is not something harmonious going on in the front office, we can come back to this podcast and say, "Hey, look, all we're doing is giving you the news and saying this is a little bit strange and abnormal."
Yeah, when we do these shows, Geoff, we reveal some stuff that we could go. We reveal stuff about their front office, or things we've heard about the coaching staff, how things could be better. I just know that on Washburn, that everybody loves the guy. Really smart, obviously the son of Jim Washburn. Kind of, not to denigrate Jim, but Jeremiah's like the exact opposite. As a guy, I'll leave it at that. He's not going to create a stir. He's very sharp. I've never met the guy. I just know about guys that work with him, whether it was in Detroit, Miami, and he's getting a shot here. It's just I've never seen anything like this. I seriously have not. People have brought up Nick Caserio, but Caserio's situation was different. Yeah, he did work with the receivers, but I don't think his ascension was quite like this to director of player personnel. So, but again, we don't even know exactly if that. Okay, so we've said for a year and a half now about titles, Geoff. Titles don't really mean much, especially in scouting. They mean next to nothing. It's really, what do they actually do?
Right.
We're going to get to the bottom of this. We're going to get it. I just don't know enough now. I feel bad. It caught me by surprise. When do they announce this? Friday. We're dropping this Monday morning.
Right.
So we'll get it.
Recording it Saturday night. So again, we haven't had a lot of time to get into it.
Yeah, we'll get it. Yeah, we're going to get it. Don't worry about that.
Sure. Now on the medical staff side, some people were a little bit surprised that, did we talk about Sean Holes last? But yeah, I guess we did. We already mentioned that Sean Holes and Shireen were out. In now though are a new director of sports medicine, Tom. I'm going to do my best guess here and say Hunkel and Ted Rath as the director of sports performance. So I'm not 100% sure I know the difference between the director of sports medicine and the director of sports performance, but I'm sure that, again, that's something that the bottom line is the medical staff has been overhauled, and you have new people, you have new head orthopedist, I believe. Now you've got guys who are in charge of sports science that are new, and we'll see how that works out.
Hey, so Hunkel, I'm told, interviewed over the years for several head athletic trainer jobs. Didn't get them, but he is very well respected. Tom was here in Philly. Brad Childress took him to Minneapolis with Eric Sugarman. And look, if you work for Eric Sugarman, and
yes,
he's about as good as he gets. So the Eagles went back to their roots. Got someone who's proven, and Ted Rath. Yes, there's an off the field issue in his past. Right. Which the Eagles have did their homework on. He wouldn't have gotten hired unless he felt comfortable with it. He's very well respected, and I think what they did in this case, Geoff, Howie Roseman specifically, he went with more proven people instead of trying to be so cutting edge, which I get. I mean, you always want to be ahead of science and what's going on, but why not get people, as I said on our last show, get people who've done it before, who've worked with NFL players. That was kind of my hint. I didn't know the exact guy. I just knew they were going to get someone veteran,
right?
And that's what they did. Things should be, I say, should be more stabilized, but based on the history of what's been flopped here in the medical department, you can't say there won't be another change coming, or there won't be one after next season.
True,
but they're going with veteran people.
Doesn't this come back to what we occasionally criticize the Eagles for? Sometimes it's that they try to go out there and get the most innovative, the most cutting edge, or they try to outsmart themselves, and then when it backfires, they go back to their basics. Kind of like you fire Andy, you go get Chip Kelly, it doesn't work out, then you go back to Doug Peterson, which is more the conventional guy. He's not conventional, Doug Peterson, but you know what I'm saying. He's not from the college ranks, and it felt safer.
Well, so when you say that, when they hired Chip, let's not forget there were 3 teams after him. Like that.
I know that. I'm not saying the Eagles were the only ones.
Right. But back then, it was seen as the thing to do. And obviously it didn't work out like they thought, and Chip never became what anyone thought as a head coach. But in this case, I don't blame him for trying to see, because look, they've had such bad problems the last 3 years with rehabs of players. I mean, you and I could do a show for an hour on all of the injuries that took too long to get rehabbed. It's guys having reoccurrence of injuries. I mean, it's just been pathetically bad. For whatever reason, we don't have the answer.
For the Super Bowl staff, though. I mean, there were injuries that year, but not nearly as many as the last 2 years. And I don't think that they per se needed to go do the overhaul. You and I talked about why they did the overhaul and certain stuff getting out there, but sometimes you have to live with that stuff if you have good people in place. And
it's really you're right. It's really the last 2 years in particular. Not that the Super Bowl year had its issues with injury, but man, the last 2 years and just the length of rehab was just. It's really and the amount of players that went into reserve, the foot injuries, the Liz Frank injuries. I don't know what to tell you, but they have to have better luck. And I'll give them this: they're Howie's undaunted with this stuff. He's got to get it right. It's obviously on him.
Yeah,
he makes all the decisions, so he's got to get it right. And man, if these don't work, I throw my hat up in the air when I go. I don't know what you do.
Yeah, no doubt about it. If they have another year of injuries like the last 2, then at that point you just say, I don't know what else. I mean, how he's already going to try to get younger and overhaul the roster. If these young guys get hurt, I don't know what.
He better, because he's been on record saying it. So we'll as we said, the fans, our listeners will hold him accountable, and we will call him out if they're projecting 10 picks. If they wind up with less than 7. That's a problem, because this roster could hold at least 8 new players.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even 10. So.
Oh, yeah. There needs to be some turnover. All right, let's get to some questions. I'm excited about some of the questions that we haven't been able to get to. They've been good ones. Before we do that, as always, we will pause for a word from our great sponsors. Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Adam Caplan and I love using Anchor for our Inside the Birds podcast every week. It's so user-friendly, anyone can create their own podcast, and you should too. Just download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Anchor gives you everything you need to start your own podcast from your phone or computer.
Its creation tools allow you to record and edit your podcast for a professional sound, and Anchor will distribute your podcast for you to Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and so many other platforms. It can be heard by everyone, just like Inside the Birds. You can also make money from your pod with no minimum listenership. What are you waiting for? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to create your podcast today.
Hey, it's Geoff Mosher. Are you interested in money? Yep, I thought so. Well, on the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast, Mesh will follow paper trails, chat with experts, and break down complex ideas to bring clarity to the mystical financial phenomena and help listeners uncover the story behind their money. Each of these compelling stories will hit a broad range of subjects ranging from buying Bitcoin, dealing with student debt, and everything in between. So if you're interested in money, and I know you are, check out the Talk Money with Mesh Lakhani podcast on Anchor.
All right, Adam. I have identified a few. Maybe you have as well some good questions that we could answer from the Ask ITB on Twitter. And then I remind everybody, you want to ask us a question? Don't wait for us to ask you to ask us. Just anytime, use hashtag AskITB. And lately, I feel like more people are doing that, Adam. They're not waiting for us to put it out. We're just getting hashtag AskITB questions right from the start. So
One thing I wanted to add is
Sure.
I want to add, you don't have, as Geoff just said, you do not have to wait for us to put it on Twitter. Just set them there, and you don't have to tag us. Just put it to the hashtag AskITB. Because I look at them every couple days, and not only does it help for the show, just to have questions. There's some that the questions are so good. I'm like, I need to find out about this. I should have known about it. Like we want to make sure we have it for the show, just for as a topic. Every once in a while, we get some stuff that's so good. We're like, oh man, we may do a segment on that. So keep them coming.
Now, here's one who reached out to us just through that way. He just asked us a question without responding to anything. Hashtag AskITB, and his name is Crane_Holmes, at Crane_Holmes on Twitter. And he asks, with coaching hires officially announced, can we say Josh McCown won't be back in a coaching role? And he adds that all or nothing makes him like Josh McCown even more. I have to be the first to admit, I'm a failure here. I have not seen yet a minute of all or nothing.
Neither have I,
except for a little clip of Zach Ertz on Twitter.
Yes, I will soon. Crane_Holmes, or Crane. I was told, I actually talked to Josh's agent, Mike McCartney, at the Senior Bowl. Mike told me that they're going to take, he's got to go through the rehab first. Josh says it's 6 months because he tore the hamstring off the bone. And then Josh will make a decision about playing, by the way. He has not said he's not playing. They're going to make a decision. Now, here's the problem, Crane. Now, yes, you could always create a role for him. The reason why, simply because Josh decided that he had not decided whether he wants to play or not, they couldn't really give him a role as a coach because he's still an active player. If it comes down to July and he doesn't want to play anymore, he may have a chance, but there's some things complicating it. His family, he can't as a coach, I don't think there's any way he could do what he did last season is fly home Friday night and coach the high school team and then be back for the walkthrough on Saturday. That'd be hard to. I don't know that you can. I don't think you could be a coach and then do an NFL coach. So you can't do that. So he needs to make a decision. Josh is one of the all-time great guys. I've known Josh, I don't know, 5 or 6 years. Met him many years, actually maybe before that. But I could just tell you, and I'm sure it doesn't surprise me, Crane, that you made the comment about how much you liked him after watching All or Nothing. He's a special person. But the thing that blew me away is how good of an evaluator is. I asked Josh some questions about players he played with, and he's very critical in terms of what he saw, what he liked, what he didn't like, and that really surprised me because Josh is such a positive guy. You're like, well, is he really going to tell me the truth? And I learned a lot from him. And obviously, being a quarterback, these guys are generally smarter than everyone else, or they see the game differently. So we'll see with him, but great guy.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next question from Alonzo at Senor_Fonzie. And he asks, do you think the OC group, so I guess he's referring to not just Press Taylor, but also Jeff Stoutland and Rich Scangarello, will have any...
we answered this last time. Remember we dealt with this?
Whether they would input? I'm sorry, I didn't realize we did.
Yeah. In fact, I remember doing it at @senior_Fonzie. Yeah,
you know what we did? Okay. Oh, I think the answer that we both did is yes. We expect all these newcomers on the coaching staff to have their voice heard in the scouting process, because coaches generally have their voice heard during the process.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, I'll add to that. Okay,
Mhm.
since we're doing this question again, here's what I'm told just from talking to coaches who've worked for the Eagles under Roseman. Since he came back in 2016, way better listener, does seek out coaches. As a matter of fact, if he thinks certain coaches are better evaluators than maybe others, he may ask them their opinion of other positions that they don't coach if they've seen the player, or he may ask them, "Hey, if you watch these players, let me know what you think." So that's good. I mean, that's good. But he does listen to everybody. He's I don't know what happened from his year off in 2015, but something happened where he felt like he had to be a better listener. Because I mean, I've heard this from at least a half dozen people. He's just done a really much better job of listening. Now, in terms of the draft, that's something that has to be better. There's no question. The draft this has had mixed reviews. We've talked about this before. For whatever reason, I don't know, but the drafts have to be better. And the other thing that people bring up, Geoff, is where are the All Pros? You know, where are the Pro Bowlers from these recent drafts? You have to always. We generally give 3 years for a draft, but we want to see better early returns.
Absolutely. Let's go to Herb at Herbicidal. He's a pretty good question. He asks, who is Dino Vaso? What is his role? I guess because he was part of the people who were promoted recently. He was actually on staff, so I guess people didn't realize what he did. He was a defensive quality control coach, and those guys are about as behind the scenes as you get, and an assistant secondary coach. So now he's the assistant coordinator for the defense. Not the assistant defensive coordinator, though, kind of the assistant coordinator / defense. This is, people got confused, by the way, when Matt Burke was named the run game coordinator, and people thought he is now taking Jeff Stelton's job. No, he's the run defense coordinator. So Matt Burke is now in charge of the defensive game plan to stop the opponent's run game. Dino Vaso, I don't know. To me, he's just a helper on defense. Is that a good way to say it? Assistant coordinator on defense?
Yeah, he came with Doug Peterson from Kansas City, and he has an interesting title. What's that?
He is a Philadelphia guy. He's
from here, right? But
went to Ridley High School.
Right, he was with Doug in Kansas City, came over from there to Philly. Right. He's assistant coordinator / defense. I think he's just an assistant. Nothing. He's not like he's going to be calling the defense at all. It's a promotion. We're going to get a lot more on these guys. These just happen, and there's so many changes, Geoff. When I started some research for the show, like Rich Gangarello, it's going to have much more significant role than I expected. Because when you have senior offensive assistant, that could be anything.
Right.
That literally, you could actually be coaching a position. Like it could be anything. He's going to have a pretty good role in game planning. He's as he should, because he's a former coordinator. He knows the West Coast offense better than probably anyone other than Doug on the staff. So he's going to be real important for Press Taylor, because Press has got a pretty significant role now in the passing game coordinator, and in addition to being a quarterback's coach. So this is good. And one thing I do want to add, I do want to applaud Peterson in one way here. I had been very critical, and I think rightfully so, of the way that Doug really botched the coaching stuff this past season in terms of not quite coaching his coaches the way he should have. They have done a phenomenal job of bringing in new voices for their offense. I'm telling you, as an absolute fact, it needed it badly. They need more creativity. This is, again, I said on our last show, the tape shows this, and I've run this through a lot of people that have played the Eagles, especially lately, because I had a little bit more time earlier this week. And I can tell you that there were some critical comments from other coaches from other teams. So if this all works out, and if everyone handles their role and they all get along, this Doug's going to have so much more input from coaches than he's ever had. Even when it was even when they had a Hall of Fame year in 2017, just from college stuff, from Briner, who we talked about the last show, and Scangarello, and everyone else who's here. So this has a chance to be really, really interesting this season.
It does. I'm glad we see you. I like what you said there. It has a chance. I respect what you're saying about what they brought in and what it could be. At the same time, I'm a little skeptical. I mean, these guys are good coaches, but I tweeted something the other day about you listen to the radio or you hear this guy's a passing guru, that guy's a quarterback guru, and I'm like, can we stop calling people gurus until they win? Like Bill Belichick is a coaching guru. I don't know much about Scangarello, but I'm not going to call him a run game guru until he actually comes here and makes this run game look a lot different and more effective.
Well, he's going to be involved in everything.
Well, he's going to be involved in it, yes, but we could be criticizing him 6 weeks into the season if the run game stinks. So I'm reluctant to just say these are great additions.
Right. I just no, but I don't even see. We're in the infancy here with this thing.
Correct.
We still need to know. We're not going to know for several weeks how the coordination of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know yet. There's got to be someone who's going to hand the game plan off to who gathers, as I mentioned on our show about 2 months ago, Mike Groh's role for our listeners.
Right, and it sounds like that's Scangarello's kind of.
I would think, but I don't know it for a fact, and I need to find out. And I forgot about Aaron Moorhead. Aaron Moorhead is a very well respected guy, and here's another thing that I talked to someone who's coached with him before. Well, actually, I'm sorry, knows him. I guess I don't know if this guy was in Indy with him, but this guy told me that he's got some presence to him.
Well, I appreciate it, but let me just remind everybody that one of the big issues that people had, fair or not, with Greg Lewis when he took the job in 2016 was that he wasn't an experienced and he had no NFL experience, right? So they're basically doing the same thing, hiring a former NFL wide receiver with no NFL experience. So if the receivers aren't playing well, what are you going to hear by week 8? Aaron Moorhead stinks. He's not developing these guys. So again, it's hard to criticize yay or nay on position coaches that you don't know much about other than their background.
Well, I do know, right, but I do know that Moorhead will get after him. He coaches with discipline. The guy that had it before, Walsh, he got the job before he was ready. It was probably the best way to say it. And this is where Peterson, really failed last season is just not have a good handle on his coaches. And look, it's on him, Geoff. The front office has nothing to do with it in terms of day to day. Geoff, I mean, the head coach has just got to have a better handle on his coaches, and he's got a lot of new ones, and it's going to be interesting to see how it works out.
All right, last question came from Trocadero _SWE, and he asks if cornerback James Bradbury would be a good scheme fit for the Eagles. I remember Bradbury's played in Carolina, I think his first 4 years.
Yes.
If I'm not mistaken, Rivera has mostly played a zone off coverage type scheme, so I'm not sure if he's a real fit for a cover 1, cover 3 man type scheme. But we do know that the Eagles probably will look at certain guys, Adam, in free agency because they can't just draft a bunch of players and start them right away. They need some veterans like they've done in the past. They've tried to mix veterans with newcomer with young draft picks.
Oh yeah, and that's going to be a major contract, by the way. That'll be he's a young corner who's an unrestricted free agent. If the Panthers let him walk, that's going to be corners like him don't become available very much.
Right.
That's going to be a major contract, and I don't know if the Eagles want to do that. They historically, since Nnamdi Asomugha, just have not spent a ton of money on corner.
Right.
Byron Maxwell, it wasn't. They were able to move him to Miami. That one, remember now, was not Roseman. I think it was Chip Kelly, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. That was a major bust. Oh my God, he was terrible. If you remember how he was awful. That was a Chip Kelly deal there. Maxwell was the prime corner, but as far as Roseman, he maybe you might remember. I just don't remember Ronald Darby's cut. That was just a trade.
That was a trade.
Yeah. So I don't know if any big free agent contracts since Nnamdi how he's done, but I'm sure people will remind me.
Yeah, no, just Byron, and you mentioned what went into that. There haven't been a whole lot of big-time free agent contracts since at that position, especially. Wouldn't surprise me if Bradbury kind of wound up in Washington. That's a team that Ron Rivera coaches now. They're known for spending a lot of money. They brought Norman in from Carolina a couple of years ago. So we'll see.
By the way, it's funny you mentioned Josh Norman. Obviously, he's been a major bust. Now with Rivera there, he's still under contract. I mean,
Mhm.
everyone assuming that they're going to cut him. How could they not? But you just wonder if the Redskins under Rivera, and Rivera's personnel control, as I understand it, you wonder, because he's coached them before, you wonder if he'd keep him.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. And maybe you can move him into a nickel corner role and maybe get the best out of him, kind of like the Eagles did out of Patrick Robinson a couple of years ago. You never know. Guy may have a little bit left in the tank.
Yeah, we have to see what they have. But, it's cornerback position is tricky because it's, as Geoff was talking about, it's mostly scheme-based.
Right.
If you don't have the guy in the right scheme, you can't screw it up. You really could overpay, and this has happened. Receivers, if you bring the wrong receivers who don't fit your scheme, who are not sharp route runners, the league is littered with guys who got paid a lot of money for agency at the receiver position. They were complete busts, so you got to be careful.
Absolutely. We will definitely do a lot of free agent stuff in the coming weeks as we get closer to March and March 18th, I believe, free agency date. That's going to do it for this Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. I want to thank our friends at 97.3 ESPN. Make sure you're downloading their free mobile app so you can listen to 97.3 anywhere you're at, and you'll hear me on the station with Mike Gill, Ryan Rothstein, of course, Eitan Shander. So make sure you're downloading the free mobile app and tuning in. Also, thanks to our friends at PHLSportsNation.com, enhancing the fan experience with all of their coverage of the Eagles, the Flyers, the Phillies, and the Sixers. So make sure you check it out. They got some good podcasts too. And of course, we thank our producer, Hunter Brody, and make sure you go over to that YouTube page of his, Sports Talk with Broads. You'll find the most passionate Philadelphia fan takes there are. And I got to say, Hunter's doing some big things. Smart guy too, not just passion, a lot of intelligence, a lot of informative sports takes on the state of Philadelphia sports. So make sure you check that out and check out our YouTube page as well. Inside the Birds has been on YouTube for a couple of months now, and we're putting a lot of video content out. So make sure you're subscribing to us on that platform too. And as always, we thank you for flying with us Inside the Birds.
If you're listening to this, you obviously like podcasts, and you probably like music too. On Spotify, you can listen to all of that in one place for free. That's right, you don't need a premium account. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. You can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. You can easily share what you're listening to with your friends via Spotify's integrations with social media platforms like Instagram. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now. Just search for Inside the Birds on the Spotify app or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. And follow me, Geoff Mosher, so you never miss an episode of Inside the Birds. Spotify is the world's leading music streaming service, and now it can be your go-to for podcasts too.